Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe, and today we're going to continue part two of our podcast series, Thai prisons. We're going to focus on Thai stories today from actual prisoners, stories from actual Thai prisoners, or actually, I should say ex-Thai prisoners. Anyway, but first, before we get into that, please like, subscribe, share, bang the notification bell. It helps us, it helps you, it helps the algorithm. Dan.
All right. Well, Thai prisons are full of horror stories, as one can imagine, but there are a few that we forgot to mention the previous one. And Joe, can you mention one?
Well, we're going to talk about if there was a title to this. We're going to focus a lot on phalangs, as Thai call foreigners. So this one story comes from a Canadian tourist who was alleged. Well, he was busted for smoking marijuana, or you could say a joint. And Dan, how do we pronounce this word properly here?
Bang Kwang?
Bang Kwang, yeah. Bang Kwang. I just want to make sure I said it right. And basically, he talks about how this was a death sentence. He said he was pretty much fresh meat in a cell of 60 predators. Now, I don't know if they were all Thai or there were some foreigners mixed in there when he talks about the 60 predators. But night after night, he said a gang pinned him down in the doorless toilet stalls, no walls to hide, and he was horrified. Pretty much they tore into him with fists. He was raped until he bled out onto the filthy concrete. Pretty much this Canadian prisoner said his screams were drowned by laughter, and the guards watched through the bars smirking. And this Canadian prisoner, he tried to hang himself with a torn shirt, but they cut him down. "You don't die till we say so," they snared at him. Months later, he crawled out alive, a hollow shell with scars inside and out. And Dan, the shocking details on this story here: one attacker carved his initials into the guy's thigh with a rusty nail. Which the Canadian tourist said it's a souvenir, as he called it. As blood pooled under his screams, he was being carved a souvenir with this rusty nail and by this attacker. So basically, this is something he's going to have to carry with him for the rest of his life. And the gruesome facts, sexual assault. And again, this is allegedly, folks. It's 70% of foreigners. Some foreigners have said guards sell protection for 5,000 baht, but many also said this is a lie. And again, these are stories from foreigners, and I've said in the previous video, I've known two people personally in a Thai prison. Dan?
Yeah, I have to admit a couple of things I must express skepticism on.
Okay.
Number one, from what I understand, foreigners are less likely to be sexually assaulted, as they're less likely to face violence. Right. But and foreigners, even though those who complained about the most horrific conditions, they said rape was very rare. Foreigners getting raped in Thai prisons was very rare.
Yeah, that's why I thought 70% was high myself, because I've saw that in documentaries and read elsewhere. I'm not saying it doesn't happen now. I don't want to doubt this gentleman's story. This Canadian gentleman, this guy went through the horror, and I'm sure he's not making it up. But I'm not sure. I tried to go check some sources on that 70%, and I couldn't find it a straight, just for the viewers, to let the viewers know. I couldn't get a straight answer on the percentage.
And one thing, though, I must also really express skepticism on. They say he went to Bang Kwang. You don't go to Bang Kwang. Okay, when weed was illegal, you didn't go to Bang Kwang for smoking a joint. Bang Kwang you went to if you had at least 30 years or more, a life sentence or death row. Death row, that's where all the death row inmates are. So you would have had to commit a very serious offense to go to Bang Kwang.
Are you saying this gentleman, this story that was sent to us, you're saying he's exaggerating his or he's high, or maybe he's not telling the whole story about other crimes he committed?
I mean, one of the two. He mentioned the wrong prison, or the wrong prison was mentioned by someone else, or he committed a much more serious offense than smoking a joint when weed was illegal.
Well,
But I'm not going to buy the guy was caught smoking a joint and got sent to Ban Quang for at
okay.
least 30 years.
I'll say this,
Yeah.
so let our subscribers and the folks watching decide if is Dan right about that or is Dan wrong. If someone's caught smoking a joint or some marijuana, do they get sent to a different prison? Let us know in the comments. Okay, these are stories we've sent, and like I said, I don't claim to know everybody. These are the stories story was sent to us. Okay.
Well, Joe, what I understand, of all prisoners who got caught with drugs, they got sent to Bumbat, which is connected to Klong Prem Central Prison near Lad Prao.
Yeah.
Typically, they get sent to Bumbat. It's called a rehab center, even though it's not really a rehab center, but that's where drug offenders go, whether they're dealing or using. And so that's typically where they get sent. And if they're doing less than 30 years, they get sent to Klong Prem, typically.
When we were preparing this, and the gentleman that sent us this, and again, I've watched documentaries, I've read tons of articles. I don't know about the 70% part, but some foreigners have reported being raped, like this Canadian gentleman here. But the philosophical take, Dan, the body as property. What's the philosophical take? The psychological.
Okay, Michel Foucault, he argued that power is exercised over bodies, turning them into objects of control. Here, the prisoner's flesh becomes a battlefield, claimed and branded by violence. If autonomy is stripped away, leaving only a vessel for others' cruelty, what's left of the self? This brutality forces us to question, is freedom merely an illusion when power can erase even the sanctity of one's own skin? And folks, I've questioned that myself, thinking, wow, all one has to do is have a bad enough disagreement with someone in power who is powerful enough, or just thinks a law is so stupid, but they violate the law anyway and get sent away. And it's so easy to lose your freedom in this world.
Well, I'm going to give you my second story here, Dan, and this was given to us, known as a serial killer's playground. The Butcher of Building 2, and this is back in 2019, a serial killer named Somsak. I'm going to guess.
Somsak, yeah.
He's Thai. This individual is Thai. He was allegedly already in the Thai prison for slashing 5 throats outside of the prison. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just stunned by the brutality here. So he basically turned Klong Prim into his personal slaughterhouse. Basically, with a sharpened spoon, he gutted 2 inmates in a single night. The first victim's belly was sliced open, intestines spilling out like a wet rope as he grasped his last breath. The second inmate got his eyes stabbed out, blood and jelly oozing down his face while he shrieked. Inmates pretty much huddled and scattered in terror, whispering his name like a curse. The guards didn't even bother to stop him. They bought the guards allegedly, now this is alleged, folks, bought on his next, who he would kill next. He roamed free, Somsak roamed free for weeks, a grinning reaper in a sea of 20,000 Thai prison souls. Pretty much, Dan, wow, what do you think of that?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. Now, even if the story's made up, those are stories like it, like guards betting on who's going to get killed next and all. And here's a shocking detail. He kept a trophy, which was a finger from his first kill, which had been gnawed to the bone. And he dangled it from his neck like a string of hair. And here's another gruesome fact. At least 10 serial killers are in Thai prisons, and overcrowding makes the Thai prison a perfect hunting ground. And guards, well, they turn a blind eye for cash.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's just crazy when you read some of this. And again, folks, these are some stories, but I've read tons of Thai prison accounts, stories from National Geographic, Coconuts, other publications. Watched tons of documentaries before we decided on this subject. And these stories there's a lot of similar stories out there. So, Dan, what is the philosophical take?
Well, Nietzsche's will to power finds its purest form in Somsak, a man transcending morality and to dominate through slaughter. In this lawless void, he's not a monster, but a natural force, thriving where order collapses. Does civilization suppress such instincts, or does it merely mask them until chaos sets them free? His reign asks, are we all killers waiting for the right cage?
Well, Dan, you have an interesting story that was sent to you. And I definitely want to hear this. It's about executions gone wrong. There was a story here in 2018 I want you to share with us, share with the viewers about the botched lethal injection.
Okay, apparently in 2018, someone was sentenced to death or was going to be executed, and a drug smuggler. Something I don't agree with. I don't agree with executions for drugs, but the drug smuggler strapped down, but the sodium pentothal, however you say it, was tainted. Instead of sleep, he convulsed. His veins bursted under his skin as blood leaked from his eyes. Second shot, pancuronium, paralyzed in mid-scream, mouth froze in a silent howl, and the potassium chloride misfired, burning his insides for 20 minutes while he thrashed, his skin blistering black, and guards watched completely unfazed as he choked his own melting orgasms. And the shocking detail, his tongue swelled so big, it split his jaw apart.
He gushed his face through the jaw being split apart. Blood gushed like through his face like a faucet.
Yeah. And here's another one, though. Here's an additional story I had from years ago. Until 2003, Thailand used to execute inmates by machine gun fire. They'd strap you to a cross. Yeah, a cross. And a guard would be on the other side. They'd put a curtain there, and the guard would have a curtain. They'd pin a target on your back. The guard would shoot through the curtain and hit the inmate and aim for the heart. Well, back in the late 70s, I think it was late 70s or early 80s, a woman had kidnapped and murdered a child. And she either did get the ransom money but killed the child anyway, or didn't get it. I'm not sure which, but she was caught. She was condemned, and she was shot by machine gun fire. What they thought in the heart, aimed for her heart. Well, a while later, they heard moans from the morgue. Turned out the woman was still alive. Now, how would she survive? Because she had this I forget what you call it, that disorder where your organs are completely reversed. Her heart was on the right side of her body instead of the left side. And the guards the guards didn't know this when they shot her. So what did they do? They had to drag her limping, moaning body back to the cross, strap her up, and then shoot her right a second time.
Well, Dan, I'm going to give you a gruesome fact, and I'm going to tell you about the philosophical take. Half of allegedly, folks, this is alleged. Many believe half of Thailand's executions are botched. Prisoners die slow. Some are tortured by faulty drugs or dull needles, and that's allegedly. So the philosophical take, what about it? The ethics of ending. Kent insisted death. That's an interesting quote. I want to read that again. They've never looked at it that way before. Never looked at that.
I've heard that philosophy before. They say you're killing someone for killing someone. I don't know.
I'm not saying I totally agree, but it is an interesting quote. It is a deep philosophical quote. This horror challenges us. Does intent justify suffering, folks? Or does the act's brutality reveal a deeper moral decay in our quest for retribution? And look, these are interesting philosophical cases, or psychological. I guess in conclusion, Dan, the living hell inside the Thai prisons, it persists. And again, folks, there's thousands of stories out there. These aren't just stories. They're bleeding, they're festering truth of allegedly what's going on in Thai prisons. And in some cases, I shouldn't even say allegedly, because the people, like I said, the few people I knew told me it was brutal, and we've seen many things, tons of evidence. Over 370,000 souls are in a meat grinder of daily violence, daily rot, and crazy madness. So, Dan, anything to add to that?
No, I can't think of anything. I mean, well, actually, off the top of my head, as far as the death penalty itself, there are some cases where I do indeed agree with the death penalty. But that's reserved for very heinous crimes, but I most definitely do not agree with executing people for drug. I'm not even okay with incarcerating people for drug possession or drug dealing. And that doesn't make me the most popular fella in a lot of circles, but it's the truth. And I definitely don't believe in someone being put to death for drug trafficking. That's just not my thing.
Well, to me, a call to action would be this. Obviously, like, subscribe, and share our videos. But remember, think twice before you think about breaking the law in Thailand.
Oh,
Think twice. Think twice, because prison, even I don't care, even if you go to a Western prison, it's horror.
oh yeah.
Dan, you mentioned when we were talking in a conversation, I don't even want to go to a prison in Norway. I don't want to go to any kind of prison.
Nope.
But
Norways have the best prison as far as luxuries go, as far as personal liberties within the prison, and as far as comforts, has low recidivism rate. But you know what? I just like the idea that I can go where I want when I want. I can eat what I want when I want. If I feel like going for a walk outside, if I feel like going for a drive in the countryside, I like that I have the opportunity to do it. If I don't like what one restaurant is serving, I'd like to go to another restaurant. It's just little things like that.
so the final philosophical take, Dan, the duty of the witness. What's that? Sartre is his name. Is this individual's name?
Statue.
Yep. Argues existence is defined by responsibility. We are condemned to be free, yet bound to act. These horrors thrust the burden upon us to know. To know is to be culpable. If we turn from this abyss, we betray the human project. Interesting. We know, but again, there is a gray area. Some people believe that some of these criminals deserve to be treated like this, and there's many other human rights organizations that believe it's inhumane. To me, look, we've discussed this in the past video, and you said it earlier, I believe. There are heinous crimes like raping a child. I'm sorry, I have a hard time having sympathy on you.
I don't. If I learned someone who, and you hear stories,
Yeah.
someone who raped and murdered a child, and they already had a long criminal record as it was, someone like that getting put to death, I feel no more empathy for them than I do a cockroach getting stepped on.
And again, if it was up to me in my world, there are certain crimes or that are considered crimes I would do away with. There's non-violent crimes. I think, come on. But again, this is not an easy issue. Our silence sustains the slaughter. Our voices might end it. What does it mean to live ethically while others die in such darkness? Well, I'll say this, folks. Remember, especially as a foreigner, remember, this is not our country. So
Right. And so many Westerners come here and they think, whether it's tourists or expats, they can just do as they please. If you keep it within reason, you pretty much can. You mess with things like drugs or you start disrespecting people or all that, there's plenty of trouble to be found.
like we said earlier, think twice, folks. Think twice. We've hoped you enjoyed this series. Any final thoughts, Dan?
I said all there is to say for today.
Well, folks, again, like, subscribe, share, bang that notification bell. And like I said, it helps us, it helps you, helps the algorithm. And wherever you're at in the world, take care.